All right. Let's get fired up here. Hello and welcome to the next episode of Read Rothbard. We have been on a preparatory call for this particular episode for quite some time, and hopefully it pays off. What do you say, Robert? How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing all right, buddy. How are you doing? Where's the intro that I worked all day and night for?
What was that intro? Was that the intro? Is that the one where we talk about any link you click on our website that goes to a product on Amazon will pay us some dollar bills?
What you're talking about right now. The intro that I made for this podcast.
Oh, right. So not if someone clicks on an Amazon link and then, even if they don't want that item, search for something else, then we get paid? Because they can do that.
That sounds amazing, Daniel.
I can play the new intro. You guys ready? Here we go. The new intro.
I get more of that?
Maximum freedom. Read.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom.
Stay on target.
Maximum freedom. Read Rothbard.
Oh, that.
Man, let's go banging.
I was chair dancing, just so you know.
You get the bass cranked. That's how you listen to that. If you don't, you're doing it wrong.
You know, my 1-year-old, when I play back episodes of the Read Rothbard podcast, which you never do and I do all the time, probably way too much, when I play it back, my 1-year-old starts dancing to the intro music. It's hilarious.
There's no intro music.
Oh, that's right. You don't know about the intro music because you haven't listened to any of our own shows.
What intro music? Are you telling me that I slaved all night and day to make this intro music for this podcast and only to have it rewritten? I'm changing it?
No. You just provided this a few days ago.
Yes, I know.
We have been doing this podcast for 2 months, and we have had intro music on every episode up until today.
No.
Yeah, we have.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. What is it? Is it any good?
It's excellent. We have so many listeners because of it.
I'll have to maybe check it out. Maybe I will. All right. This is good to know.
You can be our second listener. It'll be awesome.
No promises.
All right. So, Robert, how are you doing today? Now that we've figured out that you have never listened to any one of our shows, therefore you have no basis for determining where we have been and how we should improve. Yeah.
I've listened to every episode as we record them, as I am on every episode. Unless you're doing episodes behind my back.
No. As I told you, you see the sausage going in. You see the lips, the assholes, the intestines going into the grinder, but you do not see the finely polished, encased in its own stomach lining, ready for the grill final product.
You sound like a lipstick counter girl who's just like talking up the product, how she's going to make everybody look so beautiful if they just use their makeup. And you walk by and you go, nah. I'm the realist that walks by and goes, you can just put lipstick on a pig. You really can't. You really can't dress it up too much, Daniel. I don't know what magic you think you're working, but.
All right. Well, I didn't mean to get into politics right away. Putting lipsticks on pigs and whatnot, making political candidates sound like reasonable human beings that should be our divine overlords or anything like that. But why don't we get into some topics, eh?
What topic would you like to get into, Daniel?
Well, I know that Pokemon Go is like the latest hashtag buzzword thing going on, and I don't know a whole lot about it, but you had sent me a story, so let's talk about that story. We'll have a link below, audience, so you can go ahead and see the article that we're talking about. But Robert, why don't you give us a brief synopsis, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so Pokemon Go is the latest rage to hit phones and devices. If you don't know about it, you've heard of Pokemon, everyone on the planet has. But it is the device, the app that is getting nerds to actually get out and exercise. And there's been all kinds of articles about Pokemon Go. We're specifically going to talk about one of them, but just as a brief summary, you go out into the world and you physically look for Pokemon. Apparently it works with your phone GPS, and mostly situated around cities and major urban areas right now. If you're in a rural area, pretty much good luck to you. But as it is, it's more downloaded than Tinder right now. So there are articles saying that we care more about catching Pokemon than we do about catching the opposite sex.
Or do you mean...
The headline...
Wait. You mean Grindr for you, right?
Yes. That's right. So, Daniel, thank you. Already it's been used by some criminals to set traps for unwary victims. Apparently in the game, and I don't know this to be true, or I haven't used it myself, but apparently in the game you can kind of mark areas like, hey, there's good Pokemon over here. Why don't you come over here? Preferably unarmed and at an off time in the dark, and we can attack you. So, yeah, 3 guys, I think we're in St. Louis, and they were robbing people who were looking for rare Pokemon. But we're going to be talking about this main article. It's been appeared on Kotaku, and it's basically talking about how, well, it's written by a guy named Omari Akil, and it's called Pokemon Go Could Be a Death Sentence for a Black Man. And he's basically talking about how the game encourages people to act suspiciously. You kind of walk around, you kind of poke in places that aren't normally pokey, I guess you could say. Basically, it's saying that if you play it as intended, you look like a suspicious person doing something weird or, well, suspicious. Like, why are you in this place? Why are you walking down this alleyway? Why are you wherever at this odd time of day? Because apparently, in order to catch them all, you've got to go to strange places or unsafe places. And he's saying that by acting suspiciously and with all the murder happening, that especially as a black man, he has a higher chance of getting shot and killed if he acts suspiciously than anyone else. He's saying it as a black man, although you could also argue that anybody that's walking around looking a little suspicious would draw some sort of suspicion. So, Daniel, what do you think about his comments?
Well, that's kind of a hard one to know what to say. I mean,
he's talking about his own experience.
Sure. I don't know. I mean, what's your opinion? Like, what are you thinking?
I think it's a fairly legitimate claim. I mean, he's not oblivious to the news. He sees that, I mean, obviously the news is focusing on when a black person gets murdered as opposed to when a white person gets murdered. But I think it's, and there's more fear surrounding if you see a black guy in the street. I don't know. That's totally depends on the person. As his own experience, I can't really disagree with him. If he feels like people are looking at him weird, if he feels unsafe going to these places by playing this game, then I would say that, maybe that's the reason not to play the game or to, I mean, it's a market force, right? If you feel unsafe playing a game, then you're not going to play it. That's fine. It's not like the game's fault if he goes and does a thing and gets murdered or killed or robbed or something like that. I mean, imagine the people that got robbed by these criminals in St. Louis, are they going to sue Nintendo? Could they? Do they have a case? If this guy gets hurt playing this Pokemon Go game, do you think Nintendo is in any way liable for producing this content which people would then use to commit crimes? I don't even know. The onus is on the person committing the crime, and you're taking the risk by going anywhere at any given time. And at best, this game is like advice. Like, hey, maybe you should go over here, and if you do go over there, you might be able to catch a Pokemon. Well, that's no different than any other incentive to go anywhere. That's no different than your friend telling you to meet with him somewhere, or you to have an idea that you want to buy a hamburger, so you go to a restaurant. Do you have ideas? Or have I just said them all for you?
No, you were great. I'm trying to formulate several opinions all at once, which is pretty common for me on the show. So, saying that people are utilizing this as a bait and trap kind of situation, and whether Nintendo is liable for that or not, because is that an angle you're kind of talking about?
I am, although I will say this: I have not seen that posited by anybody, thankfully.
Okay. So it's just us.
Well, it's no different than the lady who's on trial for giving bad advice for a guy to kill himself. Right,
yeah, harkening back to our last show.
Right.
So I think this is equivalent to saying that Craigslist is somehow responsible for people saying, post an ad, hey, come here this location at this time for buying whatever and bring cash, and then it ends up being that they're just there to get robbed or whatever. Sure. Craigslist is in no way responsible for that, though it happens to be a medium through which they can sort of do that. And so I would say a similar situation with Nintendo, though I'm sure that they have all sorts of disclaimers and shit when you sign up and use the thing, because like when I fire up like the GPS in my car or a number of other things, it clearly states that I'm accepting the responsibility for whatever, So I don't think that the provider of the service is necessarily to blame. And I'm going to segue us like fucking sideways here.
Wait, can I jump in there real quick?
Okay.
Before you segue us all the way out of it? So if that were the case, if these people that were robbed could successfully sue Nintendo for providing a platform by which they were incentivized to go in a place where they were robbed, where they were frauded, and if Craigslist were somehow liable for providing a platform, then where would you end that? Where does that rabbit hole end? If you use a telephone to defraud somebody, is the telephone manufacturer somehow liable for providing the communication?
Ma Bell got the ill communication.
If you go somewhere and you are frauded, well, a car was enabled you to get there. Is the car manufacturer somehow liable? Is the shoe manufacturer that allowed you to walk somewhere somehow liable? I mean, it just gets to ridiculous levels if you're talking about culpability, which would all violate self-ownership. So that's why self-ownership rules and everybody else drools. Suck it, nerd.
And speaking of nerds, this happens to be the nerd podcast or the nerd show that we're doing to try to, suck in some more listenership. So, nerds, welcome.
Respect, nerds. As a fellow nerd, I welcome you.
So, where was I going with my previous thing before you side railed me? Oh, that's right. I remember now. So similarly to saying that somehow the provider of the service that makes the medium available is responsible, it's sort of like when the dread pirate Ross Ulbricht, was providing a venue for Silk Road. And that's where I was saying I was going to side rail this whole conversation and bring us a totally different angle, because he got, life in prison for providing a Craigslist of, underground shit?
Right. Yeah, he was. He was attacked and thrown in a cage for providing the medium by which people voluntarily contracted to do business. Now, the items that were mostly being traded were things that have been declared illegal by the overlords. So mostly being bought and sold were drugs and things like that. I think weapons too, but all voluntary transactions. And because he provided the platform, they took him and locked him in a cage for the rest of his life.
So are they going to throw
by that rationale, then Nintendo should be taken down. Craigslist should be taken down. Anything that is ever the medium by which a crime is committed should be taken down, arrested, every single person. All cars should be taken down. I mean, it's absurd. There's no moral guiding principle to it. It's just, we don't like this guy, so we're going to apply the law in this instance.
Right, so they should shut down all email, all internet, all cars, right, all travel, all anything, because anything could potentially be used in a so-called crime. And as we discussed last episode, so few things that are illegal are actually crimes.
Right. What we were saying, like 70% or 80% of people are in jail for nonviolent, non-crimes essentially. So, but the prison economy essentially runs on nonviolent offenders.
So it does make up most of their revenue.
So, what were you segueing? You segued us over to where? Just the medium?
Well, yeah, the medium, and that brought me to the Ross Ulbricht getting life in prison for providing a Craigslist for illicit activity.
Right.
Which Craigslist does anyway, and so does Yahoo
right.
Mail and MSN and Hotmail and you name it.
Right, so we're really talking about the hypocrisy of applying the law, whether or not the law is actually moral or not, to just people you don't like, just unevenly, and the absurdity of attacking somebody who is just providing a platform.
Yeah, so let's loop it back to Nintendo and this Pokemon thing, because you were saying that this black guy felt unsafe because of the app and because he was black, right?
Right. So it sounds like, according to the United States government, he has a case. He can sue Nintendo for making him feel unsafe.
So, Robert, do you think that it's a product of the Black Lives Matter movement and all the media attention given to that? Or do you think it's more a case of the sue-happy culture of Americans?
The idea that this guy would have a case?
Right.
Well, I've heard of more ridiculous cases. I mean, when someone goes to McDonald's and they order hot coffee and then they spill it in their own lap, and then somehow McDonald's is liable because you had a voluntary exchange and then you did something with their product that was not intended.
Well, how was she to know that the coffee was going to be hot?
Because she ordered hot coffee? She could see it steaming. She felt it in her hand when she held the cup.
But at the time, was there a caution, this beverage is hot, written anywhere on the beverage?
I don't know. Probably not. I've seen McDonald's cups, and I don't think they're plastered with warning signs. So maybe, yeah. Well, thank goodness. I mean, if this guy would even think, in the article, he doesn't even consider it. He doesn't even talk about, having some sort of a case or whatever. I think he's like, a semi-sane, rational human being is like, well, if I don't feel safe, I'm just going to not do that thing. That's part of being a human being, is assessing risk and deciding for myself whether it's an acceptable risk for me to take or not. It's not somebody else's business or responsibility to be my mommy or my daddy and to be holding my hand across the street all the time. I don't know how much Black Lives Matter puts into it. I mean, that could lead into a broader discussion of what they're all about.
Yeah, let's save that for another show.
Yeah.
But I think, go ahead.
No, if you got a smart thought, I was just going to ramble on for a few more minutes. So just go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to attempt to do a very clunky segue from this guy talking about a nerd, like a product, Pokemon Go, and being a black person and equating it to racism somehow, and bring us to Star Wars and the rant against the racism inherent in Star Wars, if you're willing to go there.
Let's do it. Let's do the Star Wars episode.
All right.
I'm ready for it.
27 minutes into this episode that was supposed to be about Star Wars. We're finally getting there. And we're going to start with the Chasing Amy, a 1997 film by Kevin Smith, who we are big fans of, or we were at the time. I still think he's an interesting guy. But there's a rant about Star Wars and racism that we will play for you now. It's about 2 minutes. Are you ready, Robert?
I'm ready to hear it. It's been a long time.
All right, let's go.
By any means necessary.
Come on. That's a bunch of horse shit. Lando Calrissian was a black guy, You got the Flight of the Millennium Falcon. What's the matter with you?
Who said that?
I did. Lando Calrissian is a positive role model in the realm of science fiction fantasy.
Fuck Lando Calrissian, Uncle Tom, nigga. Only some white boy got to invoke the Holy Trilogy. But this, those movies are about how the white man keeps the brother man down, even in a galaxy far, far away. Check this shit. You got cracker farm boy Luke Skywalker, Nazi poster boy, blonde hair, blue eyes. And then you got Darth Vader, the blackest brother in the galaxy, Nubian god.
What's a Nubian?
Shut the fuck up. Now, Vader, he's a spiritual brother, down with the Force and all that good shit. Then there's Cracker, Skywalker. Gets his hands on a lightsaber, and the boy decides he's going to run the fucking universe. Gets a whole clan whites together. And they going to bust up Vader's hood, the Death Star. Now, what the fuck do you call that?
Intergalactic Civil War?
Gentrification. They're going to drive out the black element to make the galaxy, quote, unquote, safe for white folks. And Jedi is the most insulting installment, because Vader's beautiful black visage is sullied when he pulls off his mask to reveal a feeble, crusty old white man. They trying to tell us that deep inside, we all wants to be white.
Well, isn't that true?
Oh my God. You could not make that movie today.
Good times. Jason Lee, what's a Nubian? Oh, I forgot such a good line. Isn't that true? Oh, killing me over here.
I don't even know. There's so much there, right? And I don't think you could make that movie today. It's weird, right?
I don't think Kevin Smith would make that movie today. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, probably not.
I mean, to my ears, that sounded so fucking crazy today versus, 19 years ago when it came out, where it was like people were pushing the envelope and then becoming more risky. And now it's going the other way where people are like more careful, extra careful. We got to be extra sensitive, We got to make sure that every show we have has a white, black, Hindu, disabled, trans person in it these days.
Yeah, that raises a broader question of, have people always been this whiny and wanting, equality among, all representation of all things at all times? Like, or is it more just that now that people have this social media voice, it's so easy to complain about things? Because back in 1997, you would whine about it to your friends, but now you get all this, positive reinforcement when you whine about things, saying that things are wrong, or people need to do this differently or that differently, or this character is mischaracterized, or portrays so-and-so in a bad light, and that somehow reflects on all people. Saying that, well, Darth Vader represents all black people is obviously ridiculous. Saying that Lando Calrissian represents all black people is obviously ridiculous. Saying that Luke Skywalker represents all white people is stupid and ridiculous. But you've got people, it sounds kind of like something that somebody would say today. And that's totally different than the point you were trying to make, but that's the point I made.
No, that's fine, because there's so many different ways that we could take this, and we're already going like totally different than our pre-show. But, I just want to say that some of the language used there, I think today would be considered very offensive, except for the language talking about Luke Skywalker being a cracker. I think that is totally acceptable today.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. It's not racism if you're being racist against the perceived majority or the perceived control group, as if, I'm a white man. What kind of, do I need to check my privilege here? Do I actually have power in this country? I don't understand how to feel about this. It's also confusing.
It is confusing, and I think you need to revert back to your childlike state and find a safe space and have milk and cookies and not be, quote-unquote, assaulted by hate speech such as that given on this show, where we talk about things where logic and reason sort of differ with the common opinion.
Yeah, we're definitely going against the grain here. But that's good. That's good, because if I was going with the grain with what's out there these days, shudder. Shudder in horror. So let's talk about Star Wars. There's a lot to unpack in that little speech. I have some ideas. I've seen the movies backwards and forwards a bunch of times. And I know that Lucas, he was basically playing off kind of World War II, making the Empire, the Nazis, and the Republic, the rebels kind of, I don't know if they were like the United Kingdom or the United States or whatever, but kind of playing evil empire versus good empire. Is it really, you've got this planet-destroying weapon that, it's going, and it actually does blow up a planet. And then it's going off
Alderaan.
to blow up another
Alderaan.
planet. Right, it blows up Alderaan, absolutely. And it kidnaps Princess Leia. And they're interrogating her, so they blow up her home planet. And then she goes and says, where they actually are. So then the Death Star goes off and goes to blow it up. And then the rebels, of course, scramble their fighters and they attack the Death Star and they blow that up. Just before they blow up, they're going to shoot their base. Now, do they really know? They do rescue Princess Leia, and Princess Leia knows that they are en route to destroy this base. So I suppose they would be necessarily acting in self-defense when they go and they destroy the Death Star. Now, you made the point earlier, off air, that since the first Death Star is composed entirely of military personnel, that this would be an ethical, a moral self-defense destruction of all these people. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think that leads us into my next clip, which is about 3 minutes long, discussing the fact that the Death Star was, in fact, populated by military personnel when the first one was blown up. But the second one presents a question. Should I play that now?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, folks, here we go with clip number 2. This is from Clerks, also a film by Kevin Smith.
What did you like better, Jedi or The Empire Strikes Back?
Empire.
Blasphemy.
Empire had a better ending. Luke gets his hand cut off, finds out Vader's his father, hand gets frozen, taken away by Boba Fett. It ends on such a down note. That's what life is, a series of down endings. All Jedi had was a bunch of Muppets.
There was something else going on in Jedi. I never noticed it till today. They built another Death Star, right?
Yeah.
Now, the first one was completed and fully operational before the rebels destroyed it.
Luke blew it up. Give credit where credit's due.
And the second one was still being built when they blew it up.
Compliment to Lando Calrissian.
Something just never sat right with me that second time around. I could never put my finger on it, but something just wasn't right.
And you figured it out.
The first Death Star was manned by the Imperial Army. The only people on board were stormtroopers, dignitaries, Imperials.
Basically.
So when they blew it up, no problem. Evil's punished.
And the second time around?
The second time around, it wasn't even done being built yet. It was still under construction.
So
a construction job of that magnitude would require a hell of a lot more manpower than the Imperial Army had to offer. I bet they brought independent contractors in on that thing. Plumbers, aluminum siders, roofers.
Not just Imperials. Is that what you're getting at?
Exactly. In order to get it built quickly and quietly, they'd hire anybody that could do the job. Think the average stormtrooper knows how to install a toilet main? All they know is killing in white uniforms.
All right, so they bring in independent contractors. Why are you so upset at its destruction?
All those innocent contractors brought in to do the job were killed. Casualties of a war they had nothing to do with. All right, look. You're a roofer. Some juicy government contract comes your way. You got a wife and kids, the 2-story in suburbia. This is a government contract, which means all sorts of benefits. Along come these left-wing militants that blast everything within a 3-mile radius with their lasers. You didn't ask for that. You have no personal politics. You're just trying to scrape out a living.
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but what are you talking about?
The ending of Return of the Jedi.
My friend here is trying to convince me that any independent contractors who were working on the uncompleted Death Star were innocent victims when they were destroyed by the rebels.
Well, I'm a contractor myself. I'm a roofer. Done already home improvements. And speaking as a roofer, I can tell you a roofer's personal politics comes into play heavily when choosing jobs.
Like when?
3 weeks ago, I was offered a job up in the hills. Beautiful house, tons of property, a simple reshingling job. They told me if I could finish it in 1 day, I would double my price. Then I realized whose house it was.
Whose house was it?
Dominic Bambino's.
Babyface Bambino? The gangster?
The same. The money was right, but the risk was too high. I knew who he was, and based on that, I turned the job over to a friend of mine.
Based on personal politics.
Right, and the next week, the Ferretti family put a hit on Babyface's house. My friend was shot and killed. Didn't even finish reshingling.
No way.
I'm alive because I knew the risk involved in that particular client. My friend wasn't so lucky. Any contractor working on that Death Star knew the risk involved. If they got killed, it's their own fault. A roofer listens to this, not his wallet.
Chewbacca!
So that poses a few interesting questions.
I agree.
Do you subscribe to the customer's argument that any contractor working under there accepted the risk?
Well, you being the dogmatic one and me having personal experience in doing similar things where I don't take advantage of things that are available to me, I think that the contractor does accept the risk in supporting something that is morally questionable or evil.
So this leads to the question of, is it moral to work for government?
And in the next episode of Read Rothbard, we will discuss this very topic, or we can talk about it now.
We have to talk about it right now, Daniel.
We did bring it up.
So you've got these contractors who understand the risk. They're working on this giant machine of death, and they are accepting money from a gang of thieves. They're taking stolen money to do this job, to create an instrument of death. How innocent are they? Are they acting immorally? Are these akin to the bricklayers who built the ovens for Hitler?
You know, I think does it come possibly down to an information issue? Let's say that Hitler said, hey, we're going to create a state bakery with all of our, National Socialist tendencies because, Bernie Sanders would approve. People could stand in lines and wait for the bread that we make in these ovens. And you and you over there are most suited for bricklaying, and therefore you will be designated based on your ability to provide for the state your services to create ovens, and you will receive in recompense the necessary nourishment that is needed by you. Therefore, we're going to fully complete our bargain based on the socialist Marxist ideals of from each to each, and therefore you will build these ovens and not question what we are going to actually use these ovens for.
So in a sense, you're saying that the bricklayers are providing the medium, but they are not necessarily guilty of its misuse.
Unless they have the knowledge.
So if Nintendo knowingly makes an app that they know will be used to commit crime, then they are culpable? If the crime is not committed by them but by others?
That's a tough one. If they know that it could be used for a crime, probably not. But if they know that it will definitely be used specifically for a crime, such as murdering millions of people, then yeah, I think they'd be in some shit.
So then it all comes down to knowledge of the intended use or the actual use. I mean, like you, in your example, Hitler was like, no, we're making ovens to cook bread. And they're like, oh, well, that's what I do. I make ovens for bread making. So I'm going to make these sweet ovens for you. And
sure,
years later you find out he used them to murder people. Should that guy feel guilty?
I think it's based, unfortunately, on the knowledge that the contractor or the person building it knew at the time. I mean, if they were told a lie, then they had no culpability in it. But if they were told, hey, we're going to make these ovens to kill people, then I think that they would bear some responsibility for making that happen, sort of like a government worker.
So knowing that, hey, we're hiring you to put in toilets. Oh, yeah? What's the project? What am I working on? Oh, you're working on a thing called the Death Star. Okay. And what is the Death Star for? Oh, it's for destroying planets. Then you think that, sure, you shouldn't do that. Even if private company, let's say it wasn't some government that was only getting its money through theft. Let's say it was just some private company that was like, well, I want to make this world-destroying weapon. and it's called the Death Star, and we'll get everybody in there, then as long as you're saying, hey, we're disclosing what this is for to everybody, then you're still morally culpable. But if I didn't say that, then you're not. Am I making sense?
Yeah, you are, and this is extremely tough because, I mean, if you're just installing toilets, then you maybe don't need to be told what the whole entire structure is for, right? Like, hey,
Right.
we just need you to come to this place at this time and put in a toilet. And as a toilet installer, you don't give a shit what the rest of it's for. You're there to install toilets. So, maybe you don't know. So I guess that sort of leaves open the question whether blowing up the second Death Star was morally reprehensible or legit.
Now, as in a self-defense scenario, where like this thing is being used as a weapon, it is fully operational, by the way, when it was not yet fully completed. So the workers were still working on it, and they were shooting blasts out at ships and destroying them. So, and then Lando Calrissian flew in and blew it up, with the people still on board, but as it was shooting at them, although they were attacking it, but its intended use was to destroy and kill. I mean, all there has to be is one innocent person on there, right? And then it's immoral? Or are these people ethically, morally justified in destroying this Death Star as a self-defense, as a preemptive attack, right? Because the Death Star was just sitting there being built. They just own a thing, right? It's like the guy that owns a gun. He just owns this Death Star. He's not using it to do anything. He's not shooting anybody with it. You go and you attack him. He defends himself, and then you blow it up. I don't see how you're justified at all doing that.
All right, side note. Lando was black, right?
Yes. Billy Williams, baby.
So it's okay.
I don't know what that means, Daniel.
I'm just talking about today's culture. It would somehow be okay because of the race of the guy. But on a moral level, you're right. I mean, this is a very challenging thing because it's not complete yet. But if you know that the intention of it is specifically to go and destroy planets, and that as soon as it's operational, they're going to use it, I mean, there's malice and forethought there.
That is some specific foreknowledge there that you happen to have. I mean, what kind of evidence do they have? I mean, other than past action?
And
you don't have any specific. Sure, the script. But, okay, so then by that rationale, I mean, guns are only used to put holes in things at range. That is the intended use of a gun. People would argue that those are only used to kill people. It's not true, but they are used to put holes in things at range. That is their intended use. That's pretty much all they're really good for. So by that rationale, anybody that has a gun is a threat, and is therefore you can go ahead and attack them?
Of course, I don't agree with that. And so this is one of the reasons we have this podcast, to discuss issues such as these, because it is clearly a advanced topic that bears discussion.
Because the guy down in Baton Rouge, the new claim, or more of the picture, the more the news is coming out, is that they were holding the guy down and then they shot him in the back or whatever, executed him. The new claim is that they saw the butt of a gun in one of his pockets, and that even though they were holding this guy down, he might have been struggling to try and reach it, and therefore totally justified in murdering him. So he has a weapon. It's only used to put holes in things. Are you justified in attacking him and killing him? That's the Star Wars morality there. Just by owning a thing, does that mean that you are somehow a threat? Because I own a knife, I own a kitchen knife, I own a bow and arrow. I am somehow a threat or a potential threat to anybody on the planet, essentially, as much as the fact that anybody has. I mean, everybody's got hands and fists and feet and rocks to pick up a rock. I mean, I guess maybe a guy with no arms and no legs, maybe. But everybody is a potential threat. I mean, what kind of a world would we be in where you could just attack anybody because they have the ability to, under some specific circumstance, cause harm to another person? So just because the Emperor has the Death Star, he's not in the immediate act of threatening anybody with it, attacking anybody with it. So by what moral justification do the rebels have to attack it and destroy it?
Those are excellent questions, and I will attempt in my rant to respond to several of the things that you brought up.
Sweet.
First of all, I would say that in the Louisiana shooting, even if he had a gun on him in an open carry state, that was perfectly fine for him to have one. And if he was struggling against officers, granted, if he wanted to live through it, he probably shouldn't have resisted, because knowing that cops are, mad dogs, as we've described in the previous episode. But the fact that they're using the idea that he had a gun, even if he wasn't presenting it to them as a threat, is a bit far-fetched. So I don't buy that argument from them, saying that it was justified in shooting him, especially when he was already prone on the ground and shooting him in the chest. So I don't buy that one. But my next thing, as I continue my rant, because I'm not done yet, is that, as I've lost track now... Uh-oh. Put me back where I was. Where was I?
I don't know. I could quickly jump in with a point while you're thinking.
Go for it.
Okay, so totally off topic, but what you just said reminded me of a thing, talking about cops and how they just attack people. I was on the Smith & Wesson website recently because I was looking up basic handgun rules, because you had recently talked about how you were trained by a policeman from Maine, as I recall. And I was wondering, hopefully we'll be able to come back to our original point, but this is whatever, what the basic handgun safety rules are. And the number one handgun rule under the Smith & Wesson website is essentially to not point it at anything unless you intend to shoot that person or thing. And cops violate this rule all the time. All the time, anytime it's soccer time. They pull their handguns out. If they see a gun, they think there's even a gun in the area. Well, there is one. You have one. The cop in, where was it, Michigan or whatever, Minnesota, said he was reacting to the presence of a gun because the guy said, hey, I am a concealed carry owner. So he's like, oh, he's got a gun. Pulls out his gun and shoots him in the chest, murders him. So they pull their guns out and they point it all the time. The point is that they violate the number one basic rule of gun safety. It's like, don't point a gun at anything you don't intend to destroy, because you are threatening somebody by pointing a gun at them. And when you have a gun pointed at you, you are justified in reacting to that in a self-defensive way. You are justified if someone's pointing a gun at you to, as quickly as you can, maybe get out of the way, to knock the gun out of the guy's hand, to pull your own gun. All it is a threat, and it directly leads to escalating action to anybody that isn't, some sort of bootlicking, sycophant, trained lapdog, anybody with a spine.
Hey, I resent that dig.
We've all been conditioned and trained to lick boots and treat cops as if they're gods and are betters and some sort of authority figure, as if that exists. And these people go around and they violate just basic things constantly, and it just really sickens me. That's all. Rant over. Did you come up with your idea? Did I totally get you off track by my rant?
No, your rant was great, and it brought up a whole bunch of other things. We could do a whole additional show on it.
Great.
But I do recall what I was going to say, and that is sort of the preemptive nature or the Bush doctrine view of blowing up the Death Star that you posited, saying that it could be potentially a threat. And so there's a couple different areas I want to approach on this. Number one is that I think that individual or personal ownership of nuclear arms is okay. And that is a big question in libertarian circles, and most people would disagree with me on that. But I will reference the, what do you call it, the Mockingjay Part 2 is the latest movie, the Katniss Everdeen, what's that whole thing called, Hunger Games?
Yeah.
And the way that they defend themselves at the end of that entire trilogy of the books and the movies is that they have mutually assured destruction with the capital city. Correct me if I'm wrong, because my nerd cred is slipping here. But they have the ability to retaliate if they are attacked. Is that not correct?
It's been so many years since I read those books. But as I recall, District 11, or whatever the name of their district is, District 12, 13, something like that, they do get nuked. I don't remember if the capital gets nuked. But let's pretend like what you're saying is true, because I don't remember. Sorry, go ahead.
All right, so this is going to be a foggy stretch. But I think, one of the districts does, in fact, get nuked, and then they consolidate in another district, and District 1, the capital, is attacking them, but then they have some kind of mutually assured destruction thing available to them that prevents the capital from destroying them. And I think that is a case of self-defense. And so taking it to the Star Wars analogy, you can't necessarily say that somebody can't have something because it is destructive. But I think you have to tie previous behavior or use as part of it. And this is, of course, pragmatic, and you're going to tear me apart on this one. But they had Death Star 1. They used it to destroy planets. That one got destroyed. They are building Death Star 2. You sort of know ahead of time that as soon as Death Star 2 is fully operational, they're going to use it to destroy planets. So
you said you go by past behavior, right, to see if this person's going to be a threat, right? Well, so then therefore they're justified in destroying the second Death Star, right? Well, because the first Death Star was used to destroy a planet. So the second Death Star, you can logically presume that the second one's going to be used to destroy a planet. because you're going off behavior, which is why when people are dealing with police, you can only go by their past behavior. So you treat them as if they are crazy murderers, right? So, bringing it back to the nerd, I recently saw Batman versus Superman, and in the movie, Superman, talking about the previous movie, Man of Steel, where he fights Zod, Superman fights Zod, and he's like flying through buildings and destroying all of Metropolis, okay? And everybody criticized the movie for not being very Superman-y, because, he's letting all these people get murdered. And any normal, sane human being would be like, let me fight Zod not in a massively crowded metropolitan area. Let's just move the fights elsewhere. And all you got to do is move the fight elsewhere, so just go elsewhere, because he'll follow you. Anyway, in the movie, so Batman just trusts Superman based on that behavior. He's saying that Superman in the past has wrecked the city. And he says the quote is basically like, if there's a 1% chance that he would do it again, we've got to kill him. So, is that morally justified? According to your argument, Batman is perfectly morally justified to try and kill Superman there. Because he's got all the power. He's got a nuke, right? He is a nuke. If he's 1,000 nukes. He is the destructive force unforeseen. So he brings a whole new level of power. So if there's even one chance that he goes bad, and there's a whole storyline along those lines. I mean, the whole movie is about him going bad and Lois getting killed and then him turning into this crazy fascist-like controller of the planet.
Spoiler alert.
Well, that's what the movie is. It's been out now. sorry, spoilers. That was a major nerd football, not saying declaring spoilers ahead of time. Sorry. So, is Batman justified there? Daniel, go ahead. According to your argument, yes.
Just so you know, I will edit in a spoiler alert prior to this, just
good.
To save your nerd cred.
Thanks, buddy.
And this is also a tough question. As much as we've harped on in previous episodes the ability to take some foundational principles and apply them in a universal sense, we have somehow found ourselves in muddied waters where it becomes a question of context and previous behavior, and therefore pragmatic. And that is a very challenging thing and a legitimate question in regards to our philosophy and way of thinking.
Indeed, well said. But I'm not going to let you get away from this question, Daniel. You got to answer it now. You made the argument. Now apply it.
Okay, let's apply the argument. If we take the market as a conveyor of information, and we know that value is subjective, and that people change their valuations on a moment-by-moment basis, preferences change, circumstances change, therefore the pretense of knowledge in past behavior, though upheld in the court of law, is not necessarily going to be a predictor of future results. It's similar to like financial performance in the stock market. So I guess at the end of the day, no one can predict the future, and you don't know, even with past behavior, if someone is going to continue to exhibit those same behaviors or not.
So you are completely backpedaling on your argument.
I am getting into the minutia and sort of bringing an insight to myself and potentially the other person listening or two.
Okay, so in really, whenever you make an argument, all you have to do is give you enough time and you will repeat your own argument? Okay, go for it.
Well, I need to be the foil to your dogmatic, must be this way or else ideas.
So yeah, I'm just applying the NAP. Just using the NAP, dude. That's all I'm doing.
All right, let's see it, Robert Johnson, writer of books.
Well, no.
Show me the NAP in this argument.
Answer my answer. Answer my question. Is Batman justified?
I think I backpedaled.
The rebels justified.
Superman could change his mind. And I'm also backpedaling on the Star Wars thing. Sorry, Star Trek is another future episode where we talk about communism and Peter Joseph and the Zeitgeist Movement and Venus Project. We'll save that for later. Star Wars. I'm backpedaling.
So now the rebels were no longer justified in destroying the second Death Star.
I don't know. I'm waffling. Death Star was destroyed planets. They knew that's what it was for. The Emperor was making Death Star 2, presumably with the same idea, and actually, per the script, with the same idea, though he could have potentially changed his mind. However, he was guilty of the previous crimes. Does that play a role?
So then it depends on who's holding the nuclear missile. Now all of a sudden, it's not okay to just own a thing anymore. Now you have to be a person that owns the thing and also be guilty or free of past guilt.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
I think you have to apply the NAP unilaterally. I think you have to say that it's okay to own a thing. I think it's also okay to say you can defend yourself. I don't think you can say, I'm going to go murder this guy because I think he's going to attack me.
So it has to be an immediate
threat. That validates the Bush doctrine. It has to be an immediate threat, yeah.
So
immediate threat.
Let's take Death Star 2 then, because if I recall, they're firing it up, preparing to annihilate another planet. And Lando... No? Or is that the Luke Skywalker one? He prevents it, like, immediately prior to the destruction of a planet. Like, one of them is that scenario,
correct? That's Death Star 1. They're on their way to Yavin, and they're about to power it up and shoot, yes, when Luke Skywalker destroys it.
Now, Luke Skywalker was already on his way, that cracker, on his way to annihilate the Death Star, but it had just recently been demonstrated to destroy a different planet and was on its way to this other planet. So I guess that was technically an immediate threat?
Well, and there was also the knowledge of Princess Leia. Princess Leia had been interrogated and had conversations with Vader and Tarkin where they said that they intended to blow up their rebel base. So we are coming for your rebel base. We're going to use this weapon to destroy it. So in that sense, you're absolutely justified. I mean, that's their declared intent to immediately do it.
Okay. So Death Star 2, you were saying it was under construction but operational, and it's a little fuzzy for me because I haven't watched the one with the Muppets in a while. But were they not, like, preparing to fire?
They fire, but only after they've been attacked. I mean, so let's add another wrinkle to it. The Death Star is sitting around the Endor moon, okay? On the moon of Endor, there is a shield generator, which projects a force field around the Death Star.
Under construction.
Which renders it immune. Under construction Death Star, which renders it immune from any space-based attack. If you were to fly a ship at it, the ship would hit the shield and blow up. If you fired a laser at it, it would hit the shield and be neutralized.
So self-defense, totally fine. Put a fence up.
So you put a fence up around your house. You've got these attacking spaceships. They come zipping in, right? And they are flying at your Death Star. They don't open fire yet. They're not, like, close enough, but they are directly coming at you. Then you've got a couple of troops, security guards around your base down Endor, and they're attacked by Muppets and rebels, right? So they're justified in defending the shield generator when they're attacked.
That they homesteaded the plot of land that was on, right?
Yes, I don't know if they didn't. Doesn't get into that, surprisingly enough. So then there's the Imperial fleet that's just around the other side of the Endor moon, and the Emperor has them come around after the rebels show up, and they go, oh no, the shield's still up. We can't attack and destroy the Death Star that's just sitting there being built. So then the Imperial starships come around, and they block off any kind of retreat, which is bullshit because you can just warp in and out of anywhere in Star Wars, and there's no such thing as blocking space. But whatever.
They don't need to get up to 88 miles an hour?
They don't need to in Star Wars, believe it or not. So anyway, but they swing it around, and for story purposes, these ships come around, so there's going to be a space battle, and the rebel star cruisers go and attack these Imperial star cruisers. And then in the middle of that battle, the Emperor reveals, the space station is fully operational, and he starts shooting rebel star cruisers and blowing them up.
Self-defense,
so
baby.
At that point, you're saying self-defense coming to the defense of another, coming to the defense of these Imperial starships.
Who is the initial aggressor, though? Who is the initial aggressor? Because that, I think, plays a role in this. I mean, were they there in purpose of destroying Endor,
The Imperials?
Yeah, like were they building it there? Were the Imperialists, the Empire, were they building it there in order to destroy that area? It's sort of like the missile defense shield around Russia, like, we're going to put missiles in Turkey and Germany and Norway all around you. It's like right on your border. Or it's sort of like the Cuban Missile Crisis, like 90 miles away from Miami. I see some parallels.
Okay, it's not known. I mean, maybe there's some book somewhere where they're talking about it, but as far as is known, the Imperials had no reason to destroy Endor with the Death Star. They were just building it there.
Because the Muppets were no threat.
Well, yeah. I mean, Lucas's idea was to show, the downfall of this technocratic technological empire by these primitive people with sticks and rocks as a dichotomy type thing. He originally wanted it to be on Kashyyyk and have the Wookiees build it. It's some nerd talk right now. So then he didn't have a budget. So then the Wookiees got flipped around and became Ewoks. So there you go.
That all of a sudden makes sense now.
There you go. Yeah, so there you go. So that's why you got those furry guys. were, the Imperials a threat to the Ewoks and to the denizens of Endor? I mean, almost certainly, to a certain extent. I mean, it's not like they were going out and exterminating all these little Ewoks, but maybe. There seemed to have been, and there's no evidence in the movie that they were in any kind of battle until the rebels showed up. But, I mean, the Ewoks at the end sure do celebrate a lot over the dead stormtroopers and the stormtrooper helmets. They're super stoked about having killed a bunch of stormtroopers, so maybe there's some history there. I don't know.
So do we actually solve anything here? I feel like it's still a muddled issue.
I am on the line that the NIP still rules. I know you want to take into context, and context certainly plays into how you will act in a certain situation. And I am not going to sit there and condemn somebody for acting based on knowledge they think they have or what have you. But it sure seems like the rebels are acting immorally in Jedi. In the same way it would be immoral to attack a man for just owning a thing. Hey, he owns a gun. Well, I better kill him then because he owns a gun. Oh, wait, I have a gun too. Oh, shit, now someone's going to kill me just because I own a thing. I mean, it works both ways, right, cop? Why not?
Yeah, this is...
I was reacting to the presence of a gun. Oh, you have a gun. Why can't I react to the presence of your gun? You have a gun, and you're pointing it at me. I'm not even pointing my gun at you. You're reacting to the presence of a gun in my ass. What, you think all slaves should be disarmed?
That's absolutely a scapegoat thing there. I mean, if you do have a gun or a firearm with you and you're stopped, you don't say the word gun. And I don't know if this guy did or not, but, I mean, you have to be, like, extra fucking cautious with these people because, as this example is showing, even the mere presence or the awareness of one will make them act insane and potentially kill you.
Yeah. It's like blood in the water to a shark. I don't know. Seems to be. And then, yeah, they're on edge and they're afraid. They're scared because they're doing something they shouldn't be doing.
So let's go back
going around threatening people. Well, anyway, okay.
Let's go back to the Death Star because I feel like there's a difference between having the Death Star and having a means of self-defense. I feel like there's a classification to be made that says that the Death Star is an offensive weapon versus a firearm that you and I would think of as a defensive weapon. And I know that's splitting hairs in some ways because it is just a thing, right? But there is no legitimate,
depending on how you use it.
But there is no legitimate defensive purpose for the Death Star in its incarnation or creation. And granted, they do end up using it to defend fellow Imperial starships, but I feel that's ancillary to the argument.
So now you're making an argument, a pragmatic argument based on scale? So like having one gun is defensive, having two guns is now offensive? Or just the size of the gun is now comes into the argument?
And now I am a senator from California who is protected by guns and therefore states that all guns not used by my defense force are illegal.
So
I'm just saying there's a distinction, man, right? Like it's only offensive.
Yeah, but it's not any kind of moral distinction. There's no moral distinction. I mean, what? So the size of the gun decrees its intent?
Well, like you were saying, the previous actions of the owners plays a role. There's contextual factors. Like I was defending the idea that District 13 or whatever one was perfectly legitimate in having and acquiring and developing a mutually assured destruction type weapon to create a detente against the capital city. I think that's perfectly justified. I think that theoretically speaking, that is a way that Anarcho-Capitalism could actually come into being in that a geographic area on this planet at some point in the future could have a credible self-defense thwarting of aggression against it, therefore allowing it to thrive and become like it's a little, a Hong Kong, it's more beneficial for you to trade with us in a market versus attacking us kind of scenario.
So are you justifying then the Cold War detente in the arms race?
I guess I am in a way. I don't mean to be.
Well,
I mean, obviously, a state is illegitimate to begin with. Therefore, the premise that two states can have a mutually assured destruction is illegitimate. What I'm arguing is that a free geographic area of people voluntarily banding together who happen to develop a way to defend themselves against aggression is totally justified. Therefore, I am not justifying the Cold War, though I am justifying the tactic that was used based on whether it's a voluntary interaction between the peoples who are defending themselves against aggression. End rant.
Well said. No, it's good. That was well said. Well done there, Daniel. So did we get anywhere on Star Wars then?
Fuck no.
Okay, so you have no idea. I mean, first of all, the Empire is illegitimate. So to say that anything they do is legitimate is kind of a joke. Other than all of the Death Star was built through theft and through coercion and force. So in that sense, nothing they do is legitimate. And they should not exist.
Are you going ANCOM saying that only things that are legitimately hierarchy that is legitimately explained is okay? Are you going ANCOM?
Hierarchy that is legitimately explained? What? What are you talking about?
Like BDSM is okay, but having a boss and workers is not.
BDSM is okay? Of course it is. It's voluntary interaction. Having a boss and workers is totally okay. It's a voluntary interaction. What are you talking about?
I'm saying that ANCOMs would say that BDSM is okay, but workers and employers is not, because that's hierarchy that's not legitimate.
Well, ANCOMs are retarded, and we will get to them in another episode. What I'm saying is that
Go on.
Were you making the claim that the Imperials are ANCOM? Yeah, they're absolutely illegitimate because they only exist through coercion and violence.
So any claim of self-defense on their part is actually illegitimate, correct?
Well, because they're aggressing as they live and breathe. But then that also comes into play with the rebels. I mean, the rebels are a military organization. They take orders. They go on missions. I assume they have some sort of military hierarchy where if you don't do what you are told, you are attacked. Nah, it could be, but I don't think it is. Not that they ever show it. They never show it in the movies or anything. Anybody ever being disciplined for not following some order or whatever. They make it act as if they're some sort of voluntary military force. But I'm skeptical that such a thing exists in this world. I'm not saying that a thing like that couldn't exist, but that it exists in Star Wars. It's never explicitly said, but people are given titles like General Skywalker and General Solo or whatever. And those kind of designations usually entail giving orders to subordinates. And if those orders aren't followed, there are consequences. So you're talking about two illegitimate forces going up against each other. I mean, if the rebels were voluntary, then would it mean that they were legitimate in attacking the second Death Star? Since the second Death Star was, founded through theft and coercion and violence and all that?
Well, then we're almost going to a regression model where we have to go back and unveil the layers of history and see who is unjustified against whom, and that brings up the whole reparations argument and whose ancestors have done what to who, and it sort of justifies the affirmative action thing. So I don't think we can go there because that's not correct, right?
As far as I know. And you're talking about, giving reparations to people based on, dead people and to people that, and that whole line of logic is bizarre and mostly founded in guilt through some imaginary misdeeds or misdeeds done by, previous generations of people that are dead.
Well, tell you what, we've been going pretty long on this show, and I don't think we're going to totally wrap this up. I will comment that I think that we are in a somewhat advanced area of the philosophy and thinking of different scenarios and how they play out and which areas you can apply things with and without context. So I'm going to ask for our listener or more, if there are more, to give us some feedback. We've got the facebook.com/Read Rothbard Club. You can leave us a comment there. We've also got readrothbard.com, where we'll be posting this episode, and comments are able to be posted below of this episode, and that will give us some idea. Let us know what you're thinking, where you think we've misstepped, any ideas you have, and we'll take that and bring it up in a future show, because I think we're at a bit of a stalemate mentally on our end. What do you think, Robert?
Yeah, I don't know what we've resolved. Hopefully, even though we've probably ended up back where we started, maybe it was at least a little bit entertaining, or at least we had a few thought-provoking ideas, or at least questions, even if we didn't answer them.
Yeah, like we've said, this is two guys talking, and it's two guys trying to figure it out. And we're bringing some pretty specific scenarios to bear here, and we're not claiming to have all the answers. In fact, that's one of the points we make, is that no individual or group of individuals will have all the answers. It's a matter of people making voluntary choices amongst themselves that create a latticework or a network of interactions that transmits information and knowledge and other tacit things throughout the economy, throughout the marketplace. And for us to presume that we can solve all of those ills and all of those permutations is a bit of an overstep.
Indeed. And we're not saying what, even if we're saying what should be correct and what is correct, we're not necessarily prescribing action by others necessarily. Hopefully you'll take what we have to say and maybe incorporate it into your own thinking, but we're not saying that anybody is under any kind of positive obligation to go out and do a thing. We're not making any demands. We're just two guys talking, and if you find it interesting, hopefully you'll continue to listen.
Yeah, so I know we had other topics to discuss, but we've already been going quite a long time. I'm going to cut a fair amount of this out, so it's going to be a bit shorter. So sorry, folks, you're going to miss some of the things on the cutting room floor. But usually we do end with an update about your book or the merch that you're developing. So if you've got anything new to add there, let's drop that in.
Just that I've been working on more character designs, and the character I'm really focusing heavily recently in the past couple of weeks on the characterizations and the personalities of characters. And I'm primarily like a visual guy, so I'm drawing them out and coming up with details of how they look, and then that's helping me with the characterizations of them in the book. And they're adding some more fleshed out details about them. So, yeah, it's helping me do that, and it's been a really, really helpful process. So that's been fun for me. And, yeah, nothing else to add. Just I'm having a good time. That's it.
Hey, do you think that you'd be willing to share like a rough draft of something that we can post to the bottom of the show to give like a bit of a teaser for folks?
Definitely not. There may be like a paragraph I could share, but rough draft would be 80,000 words long.
I meant the drawings, the drawings, the characterizations.
Oh, a lot of the art is in the fairly advanced stages. I could clip a few things. I might send you a few things, and you can decide what to put up maybe or not. Okay. Hello?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's send a few my way, and maybe I'll post one or two below this show so everyone gets a teaser on what to expect as far as the visualizations that you have in mind for your book. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah,
and I know I'm kind of going a little bit ass backwards because on the one sense, here I am drawing what I think the characters look like, but in a novel, it's kind of important for the reader to visualize in their own mind what the characters look like. So I'm kind of poisoning the well a little bit for the reader's imagination, but oh well, it helps me do what I do, and it might help me promote the book a little bit, so I'm doing it.
Hey, I don't think that's a bad idea. So yeah, go ahead and send some my way, and we'll put it at the bottom of the show. I don't think we have a whole lot of listeners, so we're not going to poison very much of that well. So I think we'll be okay.
Well, I'm also going to be putting up like a website for the book, but yeah, I mean, not necessarily every reader's going to go and check out the website, so it shouldn't totally ruin it, I think. Who knows? I'm new to this.
Yep, we're just two guys talking and trying to figure our ways out in this world. Look for more information and things about Robert's book and the Read Rothbard website. We're working on a couple of other side projects that might be related, and that's just a slight teaser without telling you too much. We are adding new content all the time to the website. We're adding new podcasts that you just listened to. What's this, episode 9, I think we're up to? That feels like a big number. We've got links to Amazon that you can purchase through. We've also got a tip jar page that's going to be going live very soon that will allow you to make donations or whatever you want to call it directly to us. And we also have a few other ideas in mind, along with some other merch things that might be coming about. So we've been the Read Rothbard Podcast, readrothbard.com, and Read Rothbard at the Facebook, so that's facebook.com/Read Rothbard Club. We do appreciate you listening to us, and Robert, feel free to sign us out.
That'll do it. Thanks for listening, everybody. We did it. Episode 9 in the book, Star Wars episode. Come back, join us again next week. We don't know what we're even talking about. Depends on what's going to happen in the world, and nobody knows what that is. So we'll find out, too.
Whatever it's going to be, it's going to be about this.
Maximum freedom.
It's so hot right now.
All right, folks. Thank you very much. We out.
Peace.
The Chipmunks. CHIPMUNK. We're the Chipmunks. Guaranteed to brighten your day. Do 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 do.